Okay, so let's start. Hello, everyone. I'm Stella, and we are the European Action Coalition for the Right to Housing and to the City, a network that gathers more than 40 grassroots collectives that organize all across Europe for the right to housing and the right to the city. So welcome to this webinar. As you have read in our posts on Facebook and everywhere, this is a kickoff event for our second campaign against MIPIM, one of the biggest, most infamous real estate fairs. So maybe very briefly, in a nutshell, what is MIPIM is every year in mid-March in Cannes, the MIPIM brings together real estate players, investors, financial groups, pension funds, as well as professionals, advisors, and last but not least, public authorities, mayors, councillors, and other representatives. There, they drink champagne, they exchange their business cards, and they discuss. Sometimes they either decide in the most undemocratic way on how our cities, our towns, our neighborhoods will be transformed. Here are discussed projects of new highways, airports, projects of urban development of commercial areas, luxury hotels, skyscrapers. But here are also presented and discussed projects of housing. It's a relatively new trend. Our hosts will speak about that. And it's presented as an opportunity for investment. If you go to the website of the MIPIM, you will be able to see that. So for this year, the announced stars on the red carpet are the so-called, of this so-called Global Urban Festival are again Blackstone, Amundi, Vonovia, and many other well-known financial and real estate celebrities, and also our democratically elected representatives from more than 100 European cities. So for us, the European Action Coalition, this is the second year that we organize a campaign. Last year, we started our campaign again by organizing an online event, very similar to the one of tonight. In the month leading up to the meeting, we organized several decentralized actions in different European cities. And our campaign last year culminated in a protest in Cannes during the MIPIM event, organized with the help of the French comrades. However, the MIPIM, the anti-MIPIM campaign, was from the beginning at the heart of the creation of our network 10 years ago. For those that don't know, that discovered the European Action Coalition, it was created in 2014 as a result of different joint campaigns and actions organized by housing rights militants and collectives from different countries of Europe. One of the main campaigns was the one on financialization of housing, and MIPIM was already targeted by those collectives as being a symbol of those processes and a space, that represented mostly the complicity between public representatives and real estate actors. So already in 2014, we have mobilized against this very big event. And back then it was in London, it was held in London. So by organizing this campaign against the MIPIM, the European Action Coalition want to bring back into the focus of the public debate the issue of financialization of housing and urban development, to raise awareness of the role that real estate market and financial capital play in the housing crisis that we face today, and also to denounce the complicity between public authorities, European institutions, and financial and real estate actors. And sometimes also we could also say the subordination of these public institutions to the real estate market. So tonight we will jump into those topics by asking how finance, capital, and public authorities transform our cities, and how grassroots resistance is organized against it. So in the first part of the webinar, we will discuss what is MIPIM about, who are the key players involved, and how is this mega event shaping the future of our cities. How is it transforming our neighborhoods and our daily lives? And for this part, we are very pleased to welcome again, for the second time, Antoine Guirronet, who is a French researcher and author of a book called Au marché des métropoles, in the metropolis market, that was published in 2022. And it's a very detailed and interesting book on the MIPIM, the actors that are involved there, and the effects of this event. And also a very fresh new book, which is called L'Empire urbain de la finance, the urban finance empire. So I guess maybe Antoine will say something about that too. In the second part of the webinar, we will give the floor to grassroots collectives from different European countries, from Italy, from Czech Republic, from Romania, from France, from Greece, that will speak about processes of financialization and commodification in their local context, and also for the way grassroots collectives organized against those processes. I will introduce our panel during their presentation. What else could I say? Okay, in this second part and in general, what we would like to understand with these witnesses is if it's still possible to counter those processes, and if so, in what ways. If it's still relevant to, if grassroots struggles are still effective on that scale, if it's possible to resist and to win against financial capital, and if so, how and in which circumstances. Maybe the witness of our last guest from Athens will be very likely the most exciting one, because it's the story of a struggle that succeeded and won against a very huge project of privatization of public land and public space in the heart of Athens, in Exarchia. But we will go through it later. So, okay, I will now give the floor to Antoine, and we will follow with the next speaker.
Thanks, Stella. Let me just share my screen, if I may. All right, can you see it?
Oui.
Okay. And let me just put this here. Okay. So thank you, Ivana and Stella, for having me here again, and good evening, everyone. It's nice to see you online again. So I'm an urban political economist. I'm an associate researcher at the Center for European Studies and Comparative Politics at Sciences Po. And I've been invited again by the European Action Coalition to give a short talk about MIPIM, on which I have indeed conducted several years of research from 2012 to 2019 approximately. And I've written a book on the topic, which was published almost 2 years ago by Éditions Les États. So this is the cover. And so in this talk, I'm going to focus on MIPIM, but since you mentioned it, Stella, sorry, in the new book, we also have chapters on the very specific topic you mentioned about the grassroots struggles against financialization. So in a nutshell, just to give you a snapshot about the book argument. So the book argues that MIPIM is a key site to understand the growing power of financial actors over the production of cities. And this power mainly unfolds through the purchase of commercial real estate. So office complexes, retail, malls, and housing. So this idea can be broken into 3 main points, which form the main arguments of the book. So first, I argue that MIPIM directly and actively contributes to financialization, contrary to the common narrative that it is just a barometer showing how the market is healthy or is unhealthy. Second, contrary to the idea of a market where the supply and demand of capital meets at a price, so the idea that MIPIM is a deal-making place, I argue that it functions based on a different logic, and a logic of accreditation, a concept which comes from political philosophy, and I won't detail it today. And thirdly, using some case studies on French cities, I show that under specific circumstances, such accreditation may result in the adjustment of urban planning and politics to the expectation of capital market actors that localities try to attract during MIPIM. So in other words, what happens in Cannes doesn't necessarily stay in Cannes, and it may have long-lasting effects over what gets built, where, and for whom. So this argument is based on a multi-sited ethnography. I've conducted research on-site during MIPIM and off-site with its organizers, with some public participants that represent the Greater Paris and Lyon area, as well as with anti-MIPIM activists. And today, I will only detail some aspects of the books in relation to three main questions that we elaborated with the facilitators. So first, I'll say a word about what is MIPIM, how it is organized, how it works, although Stella already touched upon this. Secondly, I'll detail some of the key players which are involved in this event. And lastly, I'll discuss its consequences on cities, both in terms of urban space and politics. So what is MIPIM about? So you may be familiar with MIPIM, the self-proclaimed world's leading property market. So it happens every year in Cannes. It stands for the Marché international des professionnels de l'immobilier. So it's basically a convention or a marketplace, as Read Me calls it, created in 1990. It's a business-to-business event, meaning the target of MIPIM is not individual investors that will come to buy a house, for example. Here we're talking about large-scale urban development. It lasts 4 days in France. It gathers thousands of these business-to-business professionals, which are selected on the basis of their money, because there is a very high entrance fee, as you know, and social status. And these professionals are involved all across the property industry, from bankers and investors to localities, including property developers, agents, planners, and journalists. The event itself is centered around the Palais des Festivals, where some of the participant companies rent exhibiting space, but it also spread throughout the city, which really lives by and on MIPIM for these 4 days. So this is just an overview of how the MIPIM, the main, the core section of the event is organized. So the Palais des Festivals is the focus on the exhibition. On the left, you have the most prestigious pavilion with London, Istanbul, Paris, Moscow used to come, but they don't anymore. I think this is a photo from 2019. And on the right, you also have the yachts, which are rented by property developers, agents, and other participants to hold cocktails and business meetings. Provided you have paid for a very expensive pass, which now sells, I've just checked, for more than 2,000 euros. Visitors, which are mostly white men in suits, can stroll through the palais and go from one stand to another to visit architectural models, attend conferences and business meetings, and more mundane events such as cocktails. So over the years, MIPIM has attracted a growing number of individuals and countries. There was a peak in 2008, sorry, of 30,000 participants. Then it declined, of course, and we've seen a steady growth thereafter, which was briefly interrupted at the outstart of the COVID-19 pandemic, of course. However, if we look more precisely at the numbers of participants, the geography of the event is not so global. So while Read Me claims that 90 countries are represented at MIPIM, Ludovic Albert and colleagues found that more than 90% of these participants come from a small number of countries, come from a dozen of countries. And among these countries, France, the UK, and Germany form the bulk of participantship, with 60% of participants coming from one of these countries for the most recent edition. So it's not to say that there are no participants from other European countries, including from countries where members of the coalition are from, but I think it should serve as an antidote against the official discourse of a single, unified, global real estate market across which capital will freely float. Another thing worth mentioning, I think, is the gradual rebranding of the show from an event that was initially dedicated to real estate professionals, mostly coming from the private sector, actually, to a quote-unquote global urban festival as it is not titled. So this idea is not really new. It has been for some time now. It's being pushed by the organizer Read Me Them to position MIPIM as a public-private platform where, quote unquote, solutions to urban challenges that go beyond the scale of buildings are being discussed, including the tackling of climate change. And this can be understood as a result of a strategy to make the show attractive not only to real estate professionals, but also to public authority, which has been a key target, as I'm going to explain now. So who are the key players involved in MIPIM? With more than 25,000 participants, there are very different actors at MIPIM, but not all actors are equal though, since MIPIM is actually dominated by investors which sit at the top of the food chain given their control of capital. So among key players, of course, it's worth mentioning the organizer, Read Me Them, which is a global company overseeing more than 500 events in 30 countries, but for which MIPIM is the most important and event, both in symbolic and financial terms. And it is clear that Read Me Them seeks to adjust the content of the show to the interest of investors for many reasons. For one, they were its primary target historically. So historically, the show was really targeting international investors. And it's also because some of Read Me Them executives have worked for major property developers in the past or for major investment funds. Then you have the participants, which are divided between visitors and exhibitors, which rent space within the palais to showcase their offer. Among this type of actors, two actors are key. Investors, because they control capital and they are looking for investment opportunities, such as office and residential buildings that they buy to let and to resell later to realize capital gains. And then on the other hand, you have public authorities who control investment opportunities through land use planning and are looking for capital to secure their metropolitan strategies and urban regeneration projects. So investors are a key demographic at MIPIM, as you can see on these figures for the 2019 edition. So these figures are frequently used by Read Me Them to promote the show. And I think this is a good example to see how the access to investors is being one of the main, if not the main commodities they sell. What they sell to you as a participant, as an exhibitor, is accessing this global pool of capital. You have two types of investors, for the sake of clarification, at MIPIM. So first, you have institutional investors, which collect and manage the saving of corporations, households, and states, and allocate 5 to 10% of this capital into real estate. And to do so, they usually outsource the management of capital to asset managers, which are intermediaries specialized in real estate investment. And there are two categories of asset managers of importance, two main categories. So asset management corporations, which manage funds, such as Blackstone's, or real estate investment trusts, who are listed on the stock exchange, such as Vonovia. On the other end of the spectrum, the second key actor at MIPIM is public authorities. So as I said, MIPIM was formerly dedicated to real estate professionals from the private sector, but we have seen over the years a dramatic increase in the participation by local authorities, and more largely public authorities started to really attend en masse the event during the 2000s. We've seen a rise in the numbers of local public authorities participating as exhibitors, as well as a growth of the size of their delegation. So not only do they participate more, but they send more and more people there. So in 2019, for example, Read Me Them claimed that more than 500 localities were attending, with numerous key political figures. Why do they attend? So usually you have two important figures in these delegations: elected officials and technical staff. And the first and foremost reason why they attend MIPIM is sort of a paradox. According to them, it's because it's impossible not to come, because it would send a bad signal to the market. Indeed, for public authorities, the aim of coming to MIPIM is to maintain their rank on the investment map. Not that they will strike deals during the event. Spoiler, they don't usually strike deals with private investors, but they believe nonetheless that coming there can help them to improve their position in the eyes of investors. And there are also other less important motives of why they come here. For some of them, it's job networking, but it's also about benchmarking the best practices to attract capital by visiting other stands, seeing other projects, and attending conferences. Last but not least, between these two key actors, you have a whole range of businesses which are involved in real estate and urban development and which make a profit in selling services to investors. So they can sell building to investors, such as real estate developers. They can sell a whole other range of services like valuation services, research and analytics, as international property consultancies do. And these actors oftentimes are involved in the promotion of localities together with public authorities, with which they form like loose partnerships, coming together in the hope to boost local business by attracting the capital of institutional investors and asset managers. So this was for the main key players involved. And last but not least, perhaps I can say a few words about the consequences of MIPIM on cities. To understand the consequences of MIPIM on cities, I think it's important to bear in mind that although it claims to be a market, there is no actual transactions between investors and public authorities, at least. There may be some transactions between investors themselves, but between investors and public authorities, it's not the main point of MIPIM. And MIPIM functions as a place instead of accreditation of real estate products and cities. And this is a twofold process. So first, at MIPIM, you have a lot of different activities, reports that are being published by brokers, tax briefings given by experts, urban development policy presentations, which all are, can be understood as feeding the representations of investors and thus the perception of risks. Basically, it's about where and in what to invest. What is not only the most interesting on financial grounds, but also the less risky. And in that sense, contrary to the mainstream idea that MIPIM is just a barometer that will reflect property trends, actually it does play a role in the way actors anticipate and construct market trends. So MIPIM plays a role in the way they construct and see where the market is going. And I'm just going to give a very brief example with housing. And secondly, and that's the main focus of the book, these ideas about what is a good investment are circulated across participants and especially public authorities. So when they come at MIPIM, public authorities actually gain access to the highly selective criteria of the real estate asset management industry. And in some cases, they use what they learn at MIPIM when they come back home to design their urban development project and policies. So one quick example about how the first part of the process works, resulting in the construction of new frontiers for capital. In order to provide investors opportunities for diversification outside of office towers and complexes, README-DEM has included new spaces, new conferences about new products like logistics, retail, and affordable housing. And if you look at the history of MIPIM, housing was actually mostly absent from MIPIM, which focused on offices, malls, logistics, etc. And things started to change in the last 10 years when housing has been framed as what this 2016 report in blue called, I quote, a neglected asset class with potential high added value. So here we have an example of how MIPIM is trying to anticipate as well as reflect where the market is going. By this, I mean that around this time, you already had a rising interest from institutional investors and their asset managers for rental housing. And this is how we can explain that housing is having more space at MIPIM. And this housing turn, I think, was quite evident, quite important last year. Last year, you had the multiplication of various events during MIPIM. You had conferences about housing. You had a summit dedicated to co-living that is being held again this year, as you can see on this logo claiming that housing matters. And you had a workshop. So this is how the MIPIM contributes to opening new frontiers for capital accumulation. A second consequence, and by way of conclusion, of MIPIM on cities is how the event contributes to the circulation of investment criteria. So where to invest, what to invest in, what is a good investment. And this is being shared with public authorities. First, MIPIM functions as an extreme experience for elected officials and public servants of the competition between localities for an hypermobile capital. Indeed, when you are there, the event enacts the very idea that localities are fixed place. So the localities are stands, they are fixed, and they are waiting for a capital which they need to attract. And this capital will be very mobile, and so it will be as easy to shift investment as you can go from one stand to another, you know. So I think the event, participating in the event for localities, serves as a very strong disciplining experience for localities and as a way to compete in what they, or at least in what they see to be a competition. They try to improve this position by learning what the rules of the games are. So they can, they try to use MIPIM and the preparation of MIPIM through, for example, informal advices from ReadMeDem, or through teaming up with local property consultants and developers that we're talking about, to adjust their projects to make sure that this will be attractive during MIPIM and afterwards to attract investors in the long run. And so I don't have time to enter the details, but this was really clear to me in one case study I conducted about the Lyon City region, where I could trace some of what they learned at MIPIM and how they re-injected this in their metropolitan strategy and in their large-scale regeneration projects, in which they adjusted, for example, the location, the size of the buildings to match the criteria of investors. And I will just stop here because I've been too long. I'm sorry. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Antoine. Just a reminder, as I said, or maybe I didn't say this at the beginning, at the end of the presentation of the speakers, we'll have 30 minutes of collective discussion. So don't hesitate to either write your questions in the chat or just participate in this discussion later. We will go on with the next speaker. We will host our comrade from Italy, Stefano Portelli. He is a researcher in the field of urban studies, and today he will, and he's also a very good, I mean, a comrade and an activist in different grassroots collectives in Rome. And he will speak tonight about finance capital and the way the finance capital infiltrated in the real estate market in Italy. He will focus in in a case, in particular case, in a very big Italian real estate player, Coima, who is also very well known and a key player also in the MIPIM. So yeah, the floor is yours, Stefano.
Thank you very much. So nice to be here. Do you mind to enable my screen sharing so I'm able to show something? I have to apologize because seeing the previous presentation that was so clear and professional, I wasn't able to produce like a scholarly talk for this seminar, but I would like to give just some general information about what we think is happening in Italy right now, and seen from the point of view of financial capital. Now, can you hear me?
Very good.
Okay, fantastic. I'm happy to see a lot of people I know around the audience, so let me say hello to everybody. In fact, I'm a researcher. I'm always been in the halfways between, as many of us, I think, halfways between research and now it's called activism. I call it politics. But anyway, right now I'm balancing work on my main topic. I'm an anthropologist. My main topic has always been the effects that gentrification, displacement, evictions, mass movements of people have on communities. So I study these things as a sociologist, an anthropologist, a social scientist. But at the same time, I've been always involved in anti-eviction movements. And since I came back to Rome, I've been living in Spain for many years. So I've learned some techniques that the local housing unions, pro-housing movements that are shaking up the landscape in Spain, in Barcelona, in Catalonia. When I came back to Rome, I got involved in a series of activities, and I'm right now a member of a new network, which is called the Assembly for Self-Defense from Evictions here in Rome. So what's interesting is that the involvement in this network, which has mostly grown during the pandemic, 2020 pandemic, has given me the opportunity to involve in a wider network of people that are working on evictions, urban transformation, and in fact on the transformation of cities in all over Italy. And we are just now beginning to use the term financialization. So I'm very grateful to both the European Action Coalition and the people that are here, because many of you have helped us to understand what is actually happening. The Italian scholarly landscape is still very much linked to ideas like gentrification and things that are indeed they're happening, but right now we are seeing that they're involved in a much wider scenario, which has finance capital as its center. So it's interesting that the Italian real estate investor and promoter Coima is participating to MIPIM, because I'm saying this just to say I'm not an expert on finance capital. I've had to work on it because I'm interested in the relationship of local projects with wider trends. So it's evident that right now we have to face another step in the transformation of cities in Italy. And this is much due to a series of very clear, identifiable people, one of which is Coima, which participates to MIPIM, and which is led by Manfredi Catella. So I'll try to share screen and see if I can show you some. I just have some photos. Yeah. Let me see. So basically, this is a demonstration that, can you see something?
Yes.
Okay, this is a demonstration that was carried out in Milan like 2-3 days ago against the Olympics of 2026, which will be an important moment of, obviously, we are having a Winter Olympics without winter. So it's something that strikes a lot of nerves of a series of people working on ecology, working on social, on housing, on a lot of things. And the Olympics are creating in some way an occasion to meet between different sectors of protest in Milan. The important things to know is that Milan, precisely due to the action of Coima, has become the engine of a series of transformation in the housing market. So if I can try to summarize it for what we have understood until now, the core person is Manfredi Catella, who is the CEO of Coima right now. He has grown in popularity basically due to the fact that he bridges the old style real estate capital, which is linked with the chief of, can you see the slide? Can you see the pictures? No? So there's this old style real estate investor, the most important of which was Salvatore Ligresti, who died, I think, in 2018. Obviously, Silvio Berlusconi. So the older generation of real estate basically made money by, Berlusconi said, putting the check between our teeth and going to the public officers offering money for projects, you know? So it was like an old style way of doing business, which basically aimed at selling and renting, in the case of Berlusconi, housing, in the case of Ligresti, mostly offices for companies. What is interesting is that Catella is the heir of Ligresti because he grew up under the shade of this old style investor, but was able to make a shift in attracting international capital into the city. So the core of it was the fact that he had been the representative for Heinz, the United States-based real estate company, for 15 years. So he managed to attract international capital into Milan, and thus, in fact, had the energies to shift completely the relationship between real estate capital and public. So through a series of projects, which I'm not going into depth here, but that had at their core the big event of the Expo in 2015, this new generation of projects are seen as obviously sustainable, as green, as innovative, as participative, and with a series of objectives that were absolutely not present in the old style real estate, which in public opinion is much more linked with mafias. Now, these new people don't need to link with drug trafficking and kidnapping like Berlusconi had, because they have access to a series of international investors. For example, Bosco Verticale, which are these two buildings built by architect Stefano Boeri. They're basically, they captured funds from Qatar, which managed to finish the project despite the crisis of 2008. So what is interesting is how the shift that was done by the capturing of big investor and basically put the public authorities in a completely subordinate positions towards capital, much more than in the past. So if in public, the idea of this innovative, green and participative real estate is gaining traction in media, in public presentation, in the speech of politicians. In fact, these activities are much more shady, much more, I would say, corrupt than in the past. The fact is that money is untraceable anymore, because you don't need to go for mafias to see where does the money come from. No, so basically now Milan is basically bombed. So this is a map of the projects that are declared by the City Council of Milan, and you have a project in every corner of the streets. And obviously the most I think the most interesting, the most dangerous part of this is not only that this activity is framed as a model, so that it's exportable, that other cities around are taking the model of Catella, of Coima, of Symbiosis. There is this program that is called Symbiosis, which basically aims at connecting real estate with civil society organization, which do bottom-up participation, and all a series of rhetorics that aim at, I would say, legitimizing the power of real estate in the city. The dangerous thing is that it is gradually encircling public housing. So these are maps that have been developed by the City Council of Milan. We have recently published a book on financialization in Rome, Italy, in Rome, Milan, and Naples. And the chapter on Milan, which was written by Lucia Tozzi, who is a very, very knowledgeable journalist who is working in Coima, has stressed how some areas of public housing, such as Corvetto, are gradually being encircled geographically by projects and mostly managed by Coima. But at the same time, there is an action of this real estate investor in the production of social housing. So gradually, we are seeing that, I'll try to share another part because I want to show you a couple of websites. What we are seeing, and that I think is really creepy, is the fact that Coima is looking at, through the mechanism of social housing, real estate investors are basically entering into the production of public housing. So while public housing in Milan has been reducted of about 25% in the last, I don't know, like 10 years, at the same time, in financiation, public money for public housing is gradually going through private corporations such as Coima, which present their project as in some way fulfilling the need for public housing, while in fact they are targeting middle class, the lower part of the middle class. So this is a very complex project, but which I think can be summarized in the idea that what had been a mechanism for contention of private investment is gradually being captured by private investors themselves. So I have, these are you seeing, my screen? Yeah, I think so. So obviously you have the normal activity of real estate by Symbiosis and by Coima, and you have a series of things that are much more, I'd say, creepy, because they are actually presenting themselves as beni comuni, how do you call them? Like common goods, collaboration between people and investors. And obviously, I'm looking for a specific. Yeah, you can see this. The king of the real estate, Manfredi Catella, is entering in the cooperative for low-cost housing in Milan. It's a bit unprecedented in Italy, because public housing has always remained somewhat separate from the production of private housing. So this is part of this Milan model, which is being exported right now. What I'm concerned about, I live in Rome, I'm active in Rome, and what has just happened in the last year is that Manfredi Catella actually moved to Rome. So he came to live in Rome. And the architect of Bosco Verticale, Stefano Portelli, who is a left-wing figure, respected by left-wing press and everything. He is actually working with the city administration of Rome. So we are seeing that the basic aim of this is to get what we call the hands on the city, so the hands on Rome in the occasion of Jubilee of 2025. So what next year we're waiting for is this enormous event, which is the celebration that the Vatican has every 25 years, and that we are very afraid that is going to completely change the shape of the city and the structure of the housing market in Rome. We are seeing signs of this, but we are feeling that we are not yet in the position of dealing with such a big monster, because the power of the model that has been developed in Milan and that basically aims at keeping together an enormous block of public opinion, of public money, of private international investors, even of civil society organizations. It's has a big support from the press and from the I would say from it has a very pervasive discourse, and now that it's being connected with the propaganda power of the Vatican, it will be very hard to face. So in this moment, I would say, yeah, the Vatican will the Jubilee of 2000, the year 2000, has completely changed the housing market, completing gentrification in the central city. And the Jubilee of 2025 will expand this urbanization up to the outmost periphery, even creating a Royal Caribbean port in Fiumicino and a series of other large projects that will really change the shape of the city and the accessibility of the housing market. So I will conclude just saying that Rome and Italy in particular has a strong I wanted to show you a map, but I can't find it anymore. Has a strong network of anti-eviction and pro-housing collective social centers and squat. This is a map that has been drawn a couple of years ago. Every single number is a squat. So Rome is one of the cities in Europe which is more full of groups that are struggling against this transformation, but in a large part, this activity is still based on an idea of struggling for housing, as it was when we were fighting against Ligresti and against Berlusconi. We are still not prepared to deal with such great international investors. And we are working on it through seminars and through training and through a series of activities, for which I think it's extremely important that we keep networking with the rest of the people that are members of this network. I can say more things about how hard it's being right now for us to stop the wave of evictions that we are experiencing. But I think this few notes that I've tried to give can give an idea of what we are experiencing right now, of the importance that the financializing of the housing market is having on the city, and on the hardship that we are experiencing as activists. This does not mean that we are afraid and that we don't want to fight. There's been a protest sitting like 2 days ago or 3 days ago in front of the City Council of Rome, the Capitolium. So there's a lot of movement, but the movement needs to connect more with understanding of the real estate market right now. I hope this works. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Stefano. It was super interesting presentation. Yeah, maybe later during the collective discussion, you could say something about the these mobilizations of students also against Koima, because from what we understood when we were doing some research, it's that it's also investing a lot in student housing as also social housing and etc.
Well, if I
But
can say just one thing about this before I leave, because I'm not sure I can stay after 8, but the point of studentification, how it's called, I would say it in 2 words. The new recovery plan for Italy that was issued by the European Union basically has no money for housing, differently than many other plans in the rest of Europe. The only money that is given for housing is given for student housing. This is one of the reasons why, since there are a lot of protests for housing everywhere, but the student protest has received much more attention from the press. This does not mean that it's not important, but cities are right now competing to get money for student housing, public money for housing for students. And this creates the sensation that the housing problem in Italy, it's a student housing problem, and it's not. It's a poor people housing problem, but which has also a student part that is also important to follow. But we have to be very careful of how some struggles are given more importance over other. In this moment, the eviction basically hit over migrant family, not student families. But since student housing is a way of getting public money to investors to build in the periphery, so this is the way that the student struggle is being pushed. But yeah, I hope we have time to talk about this later. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, just a reminder, please, for the speakers that will continue, try to stay short. I mean, we still have 1 hour, but yeah, it would be really useful to have some exchange and questions and collective discussion at the end. So we will go on with the next speaker. We will be traveling in Czech Republic. We have our comrade Yulia from Czech Republic who will share. She looks very ready. Come on, Yulia. Who will share her experience, and discuss about this former coal mining region in Czech Republic, in Ostrava, and how the urban regeneration projects trying to transform this region, and how public authorities they are going to the MIPIM in order to be able to attract private investors. And also maybe she will say something about the struggles going on against a private investor in an organized trans-local and transnational level. So
yeah. Okay, thank you. Do you hear me, and do you also see the presentation?
Yeah, both.
Okay, cool. So I'm also not professional. Since I left academic sphere, I also lose competences in making presentation. I just call this presentation Ostrava housing, post-socialist and post-coal transformation, because all these things are really connected. And I put a few photos of Ostrava, especially on the photo down right. You can see that this is a definitely post-coal region, because what you see are the mines basically of black coal. For those who don't know, Ostrava is on the east-north of the Czech Republic, on the border with Poland, or close to the border with Poland, which is also a former coal region. Just to tell a few words about Ostrava and Moravsko-Slezsky region, this is a region which is like most industrial in the Czech Republic. They have a very strong mechanical engineering, like it's a classical industry, mechanical engineering, metallurgy there, and especially black coal mining. They have the biggest coal district in the Czech Republic, which is especially near the cities of Ostrava and Karviná, which power is 3,800 meters. The mining there in the region stopped in 1990s, and only recently it also stopped in some other cities, like Karviná, for example. What happened in 1990s was plunder. It's a post-socialist plunder, which was a huge window of opportunities for financialization. So for us, financialization is a really huge topic in the Czech Republic for people who are doing research in urban studies and in housing. What happened in Ostrava and in Moravsko-Slezsky region in general was that there was one guy whose name was Zdeněk Bakala. He's a Czech oligarch. He managed to privatize all the coal mines management companies in the region, including the ownership, housing, and the land. This is why I call this process a plunder, because it wasn't normal privatization of in any sense. While speaking about housing, so he managed to privatize 33,500 units, which is the hugest or the biggest housing portfolio in the Czech Republic, owned by one company. He first was owning it through his own company, RPG, in which Blackstone was a stakeholder, and later also Hemstaden. Hemstaden is the owner of this portfolio now, and of course the processes that we see is one of the major. What does financialization mean here? Exactly in this case, is that they want to optimize their portfolio, which means that they separate the whole portfolio of housing into segments, and they apply different strategies of maximizing the profits and minimizing the costs to different segments. They do renovations, they do renovations, and they also create ghettos. So they have a different strategy to optimize their profits. They also, interestingly, optimize the internal organization. And recently, the speaker of the Hemstaden actually thought that she would like to see artificial intelligence to communicate with the tenants instead of employees of Hemstaden, which means that the political action against artificial intelligence is, of course, hardly imaginable. So this is like what happened to the housing, and this is how the international capital appeared in the housing in this region. So it was basically through the fraud of privatization. Somebody is drawing on my presentation. So it was like through this like fraud in privatization in the 1990s, and then through the like continuous sale of the companies for companies, and now it's owned by Hemstaden. The thing is that the land is still in the ownership of this oligarch. He owns it through the company which is called Asental. And it is also connected to the power of municipality of Ostrava and in general of political power in Moravsko-Slezsky region. Even if they go to MIPIM to look for investment, they are not so powerful without these local oligarch structures, because they own too much land. So in this sense, they need before to cooperate with the local oligarch structure, and only then they go to MIPIM to look for investment. And of course, their priorities is now housing, logistics, and services, which also reflects this transformation to post-coal economy. So this is the major sectors in which they are looking for investment. Our struggle for housing reflects these transformations that I have just described, that are related to post-socialism, but also like in process of privatization, but also to general change and transition to post-coal economy. We simply believe that the transformation of the region must be done by the local people, or at least include them. And as you see, as I told before, the structure of ownership of land and housing just simply does not like permit these people to be participants in these transformations, because they don't own anything basically, including actually political or public institutions or public power of cities or the region. And now, I don't know, I have put there the citation of the former governor of Moravsko-Slezsky region, who is the person who is, of course, visiting MIPIM and looking for these investments. And they're saying that exactly they want to invite strong players who will actively participate in the development of our region in the form of development projects, some of which are even ready to support from the European Just Transition Fund. This is a very hilarious process because it means that the local oligarchs in the Czech Republic that own land in this region will also receive the support from Just Transition funds because now they decided to reorient themselves to the solar energy. So they own the land. The public institution cannot do anything without them because they own the land, and they will also receive money from the European institutions for their business. This is how our enemy look like. They say, I will continue with citation, we will present several attractive areas, which is of course post-coal areas owned by this local oligarchy, and projects across the region to investors. I believe that they will be interested in our investment offer in the residential mixed-use development sector, while light manufacturing logistics sites could be also attractive. And yeah, this is already happening in Ostrava. There is one horrible district which is full of logistic centers, which is a consequence of this, the way how they attract investors to the Czech Republic. Ivo Vondraksi, MIPIM has a great opportunity that can improve the living conditions of local residents, the economy, and our environment in the near future. So this is the way how they present. And of course, I think that in each sentence of this phrase, of this citation, you can see that they're firstly quite powerless. You can see how they want to make this transformation. They want to really involve investment in logistics, in maybe a little bit of housing, but also services. But again, yeah, the structures behind them, it's our enemy, and it's internationally organized, basically internationally organized people with their private interests. It's a local oligarchy connected to international capital and connected to the local politicians who don't have like that much power because they don't own the sites that are going to be transformed, which is post-coal sites. Yeah, and I put just some words about our struggle. Our struggle is for housing. And again, when privatization happened in the 1990s and later the housing units were sold to international capital of Hemstaden, they decided, of course, to optimize their portfolio. Our strategy is basically against this optimization, to say it in some cool words. Otherwise, our struggle is against high prices of housing, against evictions, renovictions, and in general, the process when big multinational corporations are trying to rebuild their neighborhoods on a very local level. We of course don't like it, so we try to involve the voice of the local people into these processes of this transformation. And yeah, we are working on a very small neighborhood which is called Lishtina. And there are small houses, they're wooden houses, as you can see on the right. This whole neighborhood is a former miner colony. So these houses were built for miners. And of course, there are no mines working any longer. So, so this colony is becoming like kind of deteriorated slightly. And after Hemstaden bought it, they decided that they will sell some houses, they will do some renovation in some sites, but their strategy was very unclear actually what they would like to do with these houses. So one of our first demands was to the head of Hemstaden, one of our first demands was transparency of all information and strategical plans that will take place in this small former miners colony. We want to know it. And there were some proposals for people to buy these houses, but for a very high price that they cannot afford. And they also invested a lot of money and labor because these houses are wooden houses. They're 50 years old and they will just fall apart if people would not invest any labor and money in them. So they invested really a lot. And on another photo, you could see also a guy who is a former miner So he was working in the mine, and you can see inside his house, it looks quite good. So he really did a good job in maintaining it. But now the proposition to him by him Staden is to buy his house for several millions Czech crowns, like more than 1 million, which is not affordable, and it doesn't respect the fact that he almost built this house by himself. So this is our another demand, and our last demand is that we want to have affordable rent for those who cannot afford to buy these houses. And these people are quite old, so we want for people who are old, who are on pension, so they can finish their lives in this neighborhood in calmness and without any rapid rent decrease. So this is our very local side of resistance to the huge processes that I described before, connected to post-socialist transformation and post-coal economic transformations. And I would like to finish my presentation with the questions of what is the role of international organizing in all these small local struggles that I described before on the previous slide. Because on the one hand, we have financialization of housing that is done by huge multinational corporations. Blackstone was present in Ostrava, now it is in Staden. They try to basically, optimize their portfolios by doing what they want with the houses where people live for like 30 or 20 years. There is enormous disbalance of power between the capitalist structures that own the land, that own the houses in this region, and the public politics. Actually, public politics is toothless against such a power of oligarchy that is present in this region. And now we have local struggles and international organizations. So the question for you is what we can do on this level and how we can work together. And so far, also from the European Action Coalition, what was helpful for me personally while working in this neighborhood was research and knowledge sharing about Staden that we share between the members of coalition. It was really very like fruitful and very good to have this knowledge that I didn't have before. And of course, we try to organize, not to organize, but to communicate with other organizations abroad that struggle against Staden and to share tactical organizational know-how. And there might be some local direct actions that are coordinated internationally. And what else? I don't know. I think I have the same questions as the speaker before me. For them, the situation is new. For us, the situation is not new, but it's doomed. I don't know. It's the power against us is simply too big. And people actually, including activists and including leftists, are leaving this region. They don't want to live there anymore because it's just very hard, also in terms of organizing. So what we can do together when we organize in such local struggles, and how we can build the power against such a huge international, multinational capital. This is my question, with which I would like to finish. Thank you.
Thank you, Yulia. Yeah, for sure, the first thing we will do is to go to MIPIM in Cannes and block the MIPIM this year, but we will speak at the end of the webinar about that. Okay, so we will continue with the next speaker, with our comrade from Social Housing Now, Enikő, who is a professor in sociology and urban studies, and one of our best comrades on housing justice activism and movement. So she will present the case of Romania, maybe in similar terms and as Yulia did. I mean, because it's the similarities of former socialist countries and the transformations that happened after the 90s in terms of financial international capital. Thank you, Enikő.
Indeed. Thank you, Stella. In a way, we share our past housing regimes in Central and Eastern Europe. And we also share a dependent position in global capitalism nowadays. And these two factors actually So our past dependencies and our position in the current global capital market are actually generating differences between countries in terms of housing financialization, among others. Okay. What I wanted to emphasize, I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. What I wanted to emphasize through another example, so I'm not talking about MIPIM and how Romania is present there, because it is less present actually, and this can be a question to Antoine maybe in his research, if he interrogated this question of why actors from Central and Eastern Europe are not that much present at MIPIM. What I wanted to add to this set of questions is that, for example, in organizing and networking between real estate actors, in Central and Eastern Europe, we have the so-called Property Forum. Property Forum is presenting itself as a leading event hub in the Central and Eastern Europe. Is functioning since 2014. So after or in the period when economic recovery led to housing financialization in Central and Eastern Europe as well. And what we can see, for example, that this Property Forum, well, it's a website. I can put here in the chat, maybe in a moment, the link to it. It organizes conferences and different networking events in various cities. So in Bucharest, for example, by 2 and 2 years, they organize what is called the Southeastern European Property Forum. In Belgrade, they organize the Balkans Property Forum. In Vienna, they organize the so-called Central and East European Property Forum. But they also organize conferences in Budapest, Bratislava, Prague, Warsaw, and Zagreb. And they also have an office in London. So this shows how networking in Central and Eastern Europe goes on. So it would be for interest for us, I guess, from the European Action Coalition to have a look on how this networking is functioning. Okay, in what regards my experience in terms of housing financialization, that is rooted in my participation on writing the coalition's brochure on financialization in 2017 and 18. And then in the last 3 years, I've coordinated in Romania a research on real estate development as domain of capital accumulation, as a significant site through which capitalism is going on in Romania, looking for processes of reurbanization and class formation. And two of my colleagues from this academic research, Ioana Florea from Bucharest and George Zamfir, I also saw him here from Cluj, participated on this. So we could cover how different local, national, and global actors and processes contributed to different ways in which real estate developers advanced in second-tier and third-tier cities. What we revealed among others, and we are hoping to have our volume published in this year or maybe next year. So there is a lot to say, but obviously now it's not time for this such presentation. Another idea I wanted to mention about, about the differences between countries, how far finance capital is intersected with real estate market. It depends a lot on how much interest real estate developers have in the build to rent model in different countries, right? Because actually that is the model which is an engine of financialization, the build to rent. In Romania, the build to rent model was predominant in the retail and office real estate sectors, while in the residential real estate sector, the build to sell model was dominant. However, nowadays, in the context of inflation and of rising interest rates, real estate experts start to foresee a new trend in residential real estate development in Romania, which is exactly this: build new complexes, residential complexes for rental purposes, so not to sell, because, well, it is assumed that people do not have so much cash anymore, and the mortgages are too expensive for more and more people. Okay, some other specifics of Romania in this domain is, for example, that still in 2022, the office sector dominated the whole investment in real estate, like above 60%, and the retail sector above 25%. So the residential assets were around only 7% of the whole investments into real estate. Okay, some other characteristics of the Romanian investment market is that the Romanian market is highly dependent on governmental agencies, including European Investment Fund and European Bank for Development and Reconstruction, which represented 61% of all fundraising between 2018 and 2021. So we have less investors coming from pension funds or insurance funds than in other countries in Central and Eastern Europe. So there are not only differences between old so-called EU member states and new EU member states from Central and Eastern Europe, but also within our region. Nevertheless, we can have many similarities between types of cities, right? So capital cities might be more similar if we compare the countries from the region, or the second-tier cities might be more similar than different across countries. Okay, so yeah, in the last part of my presentation, I was thinking to present a few trends which one can identify in the types of investors and developers in the residential real estate market in Romania. And I start with a new trend, which is that the former retail-based transnational developers begin to be transformed into mixed-use actors, being developers, investors, operators, specifically focused on Central and Eastern Europe. And we have a few examples in Romania for such investors, like AFI Europe, which is headquartered in the Netherlands, Prime Capital, which is backed by pension funds in South Africa, Napiro Castle, but also Imoshan, the former, which is now transformed into Citrus, which was a former real estate branch of Ocean Retail Company. So it's a trend, this one, right? So former retail companies nowadays try to produce mixed use real estate to combine their portfolios, which bring rents, and also they sell the housing units. Okay, then we have examples from Belgium, a Belgian investor, Speedwell is called, which creates residential-only complexes in several Romanian cities, or a French Bina Real Estate functions the same way, focusing on residential-only complexes. But as I said, the most foreign institutional investors are favoring the office sector. So the office sector displayed the biggest transactions in the past 10 years in Romania. In what regards Romanian investors, as I said, they were very much present in the residential market with the build to sell model. But recently, some of them started to produce housing units to rent. For example, One United Properties, Nordis Group, impact developer and constructor, which created the first real estate investment trust in Romania. What is specific for these Romanian institutional investors is that they list their stocks on the stock market. So this is again a manifestation of a financialization of housing. Then, okay, we have mixed use Romanian property developers who use foreign investors' money for their new real estates. The most famous one in Romania is called Julius Group, which is backed up by Atterbury Europe Investment Fund, which is very present in the European market since 2014 and entered also to Romania. But so this is again a specific phenomenon that Romanian developers are backed up by foreign investors. So the information about this is very scarce. We don't really have evidence about this. It's only if you dig in for examples you can discover how collaboration between local Romanian developers and foreign investment funds is going on. Okay, in what regards our group's actions in Cluj, we started some militant research in 2019 in Cluj, in the city where social housing now movement is located, but to discover the actors and to discover how former industrial platforms were changed into new sites of real estate development, because this is a very important trend in the past 5-6 years in the big cities in Romania. So the old state-owned industrial platforms are used nowadays for real estate investments. And then, I don't know, 2021 and 2022, with the occasion of Housing Action Days, we made some city tours to raise awareness in the for a local public about the locations of these new developments, the actors who are involved into it, but also raising awareness about the need to focus our movement not only on public authorities and make them responsible for the production of public housing, but also to focus our actions on economic and financial actors who actually gain benefit from the lack of public housing in the city. Therefore, last December, when we made our protest under the heading of Take Back Our City, we thought to launch an idea and to play with this idea a bit regarding the expropriation of real estate developers. Because if the state and the local state says that they don't have land to construct public housing, or they don't have capacity or knowledge to do that, then expropriation of real estate developers could be a solution. So like, I don't know, 20-25% of what they produce should go into the public housing stock of the municipalities, and this way they should contribute to an urban development which is not anymore only for the profit of the investors, but it's for the benefit of people who live in the cities. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Enikő. Thank you very much. Okay, we will go on with the next speaker. We will go in France now, and we'll have our comrade Manon from Grenoble, from Droit au Logement. If I'm not wrong, this year France was one of the country that brings the most of the private investors and actors in the MIPIM. I saw graphics that they have published. Maybe I'm wrong, but at least if it's not the first, it's the second. So it's kind of a very important player in the MIPIM. So Manon, she will speak about their case in Grenoble and how the city of Grenoble is trying to, in a way, sell public housing to a very big public investor who is also active in the MIPIM. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So we are several persons from DAL 38. I'm sorry, I'm gonna read a text about actually because it will be easier for English. So we are a local collective of the DAL Federation mobilizing around Grenoble in the southeast of France. Since 2014, we have an allegedly green leftist mayor who is proud of his humanist ideal, but whose actions sometimes turn out to be the opposite of his rhetoric. The city usually attends MIPIM each year to present its brands and attractive assets. Last year, when we wrote to our mayor for the anti-MIPIM campaign, he responded that he considered participation necessary in such meetings to hold an alternative position for climate and social justice. A few weeks ago, we learned that 224 social apartments owned by the city and empty for years were planned to be sold to a private developer owned by a French billionaire. By the way, it is interesting to notice that this developer, Ogic, won an award in 2019 at MIPIM. These buildings form the popular neighborhood of Grenoble with a strong sense of solidarity and community. Over the past 10 years, however, all the inhabitants were forced to leave to enable renovation, and now we are understanding that the developer stands to make around 30 million euros in profit from the resale. What's ironic is that in 2021, we occupied one of the empty buildings with homeless families for a few months to denounce the absurdity of keeping good flats empty for 10 years and the injustice of forcing historic inhabitants to leave. Can you guess what the city's first reaction was? It was cutting off the electricity in the middle of December and launch eviction procedure. It's now quite clear that they didn't want us to stay there for too long because it could have disrupted their business plans. if those flats are ever inhabited by poor families again, it will only be in 30 social apartments with prices that will never be as low as they used to be. This sale is a perfect example of organized gentrification, or how to offer a popular and affordable area to the appetites of the real estate market. It also demonstrates the hypocrisy of our leaders who can criticize speculation and the financialization of housing on one hand, while on the other hand, they are meeting with major developers in the corridors of MIPIM. In some interview, the mayor said he had told different real estate sphere, MIPIM included, to find a buyer. In another one, while he is actually in MIPIM, he explains that the main challenge is that finance areas don't expand on the common goods as forests or housing. Our DAL committee has been active in this neighborhood for a long time, with open sessions every week, providing support to renters with deteriorating social flats and engaging in the strong fights for housing for homeless people through occupation. It's obvious to us that we will not allow this sale to happen without a fight and denounce the speculation operation hiding behind it. We are organizing within an inhabitants collective, and we hope to carry out actions in the coming weeks. We are glad that this building will not be demolished, and we agree that renovation is necessary. However, considering they have been maintained by renters' money for 94 years, we believe they should remain as public housing, and former inhabitants should have the opportunity to return and live here. We denounce the logic of the private market that forces states and cities to seek private money to manage our cities. We denounce how our states and cities agree to play this game and often facilitate it. We want housing stopped to be considered as a product for profit and public housing becoming the normality. We also call for the abrogation of 2 racist and anti-social laws passed recently by French government. We want a solution of decent housing for all and the end of evictions. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much. Just to add that with DAL, which I'm also activist in, we have done, I mean, for many years, different actions of occupying empty buildings of big financial actors, pension funds, and one of them is Amundi, for example, which is one of the most important, one of the biggest financial actors. And the actions usually were occupations and demanding with homeless people mostly, or people who are living in very bad conditions. And most of the time we were asking to find solution. I mean, the public institutions to either to requisition these empty buildings and to transform them into social housing, or at least to find solution for other solutions of housing for these people. Okay, so we are already super late, but we will for sure be very, very happy to listen the last speaker who will speak about a successful struggle that I already introduced shortly in the beginning. So it's our comrade from Athens. 1 year ago, the members of the European Coalition were in Exarchia, in this neighborhood in Athens, and we were there and we visited this public space that was where this urban project was going on, this project of privatization of a huge hill in the center of Athens. And one of the investors was, I mean, the project was led from the municipality of Athens and Prodea, if I spell it correctly. And after 3 years of struggle, it seems that the struggle was successful, and this private investor is going from this public space, from this hill in Athens, and we will listen more from our comrade.
Hello, you can hear me. You can hear me.
I don't know for other people. For me, I can't hear you very well.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it's better,
Okay.
way better.
Okay. Hi, nice to be here with you. I will not speak a lot about the Prodea company. Just to say that there is a big, maybe the biggest private investment company in Greece. That maybe an important thing to say about why we say privatization of the hill from this company is that the hill belongs to the municipality of Athens, but through a program called Adopt Your City, this company gave 1 million euros to the municipality of Athens to recreate the hill with plans and projects that they brought to the municipality, which is it's a process that is not happening, that wasn't happening in Greece. That a private company comes to the a private company comes to the public sector and proposes a project like this. So that's why we say the privatization of the hill. Yes, this company also owes a lot of big buildings in the center of Athens, as hotels or buildings that host banks. Yes. Okay. Now, since 1 week, we can say that we won somehow the struggle against the actually this company with the municipality of Athens wanted to change completely how this hill looks, with creating with putting a lot of cement in places, with cutting trees, with opening a expensive bar in the middle of the hill, and with a lot of interventions that we were against. And also, it's not that we're only against these specific works that they wanted to do in the hill, but also we see this as a project of gentrification of our whole neighborhood and the other neighborhoods of Athens, because this private company would come and actually create a playground for the tourists or for the new kind of people that would come and live in our neighborhood, the investors, the rich people. So they wanted to create a nice playground for them to chill, the hill, the Strefi hill. So since 3 years that this plan was announced, we made a big neighborhood assembly that had around I don't know, 400 people, I don't know. It was in the middle of the COVID, so the public place was very important for everyone. And since 16 months, the company actually started doing works in the hill. They came inside and start doing the works with the presence of the police that wasn't leaving the hill at any moment of the day. Yes, the police was there to guard what was happening, so people don't destroy the machines or anything. So this public free space that belonged to to the neighborhood and to everyone was guarded from the police, and wasn't the same anymore. Okay, maybe it's good to say some things about our struggle, or to try to understand why we won over 1 million euros. Okay, first of all, we didn't stop them from starting the works, but we made them go, and also any of these works haven't really happened. For 16 months, they were destroying the hill, but without actually making any of their works, finish any of their works. I think it's important to say that our struggle was a very dedicated one, a self-organized struggle, a struggle that was not actually demanding things, but a struggle that was doing the things itself. I don't know how to say it, but more in the base of a self-organization than a base of only demanding things from the town hall or from the company. It was a struggle that is still combining a lot of different methods and a lot of different people. It is we don't have one method, but we try to combine everything, from being at the hill all the time, speak with all the neighbors, doing events, cultural events, having our newspaper, being present in other local struggles, participating in big demonstrations, also doing a lot of direct action and more offensive demonstrations, and also using the legal means of going to the court and yes, doing things against them in the court. But it's also that we have the chance to be in a neighborhood that is very politicized, which is a good thing, because maybe it is easier for people to gather and fight, but it's also more difficult because the state really wants to destroy this neighborhood and our struggle. So it's good and bad somehow to exist in such a politicized environment. I don't know what else to say because we don't have a lot of time. I don't know, maybe just want to say that we need a lot of, I don't know, strong movements with anti-hierarchical characteristics and dedicated struggle. Also good relationships between the people that fight, and to not give up, and even if we are 5 people, to never stop directly to stop the machines from working, or to try to sabotage them in any way. I don't know, maybe if there's a question or something.
Thank you very much. It's the time to open the collective discussion, and if anybody has questions to ask to all of the speakers, it's the moment. Yeah, and maybe let's it's a suggestion, but let's focus to, yes, what we can do together, what kind of actions, and at the very end we will just announce what we are going to do this year as an action for our campaign against the MIPIM and real estate. So yeah, the floor is to everybody. and anybody who wants to speak. Jops from Bucharest.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the great presentations. I'm thinking about an important point that was raised before. I think you, Antoine, was the first to mention it, about de-risking, that these large investors, they expect the state to de-risk their investments. And I'm thinking that mobilizations and struggles for housing are a form of risk for them. And that's why in the case of Athens, we see this strong policing of the movements. And so I'm thinking what this means, what this de-risking means for our struggles in the future. Thank you, everyone. And good luck in all the struggles, solidarity.
Is there any questions or reactions? Maybe the presentations were too long. Enikő.
Yes, I wanted to really appreciate all the speakers' ideas about the need to organize internationally, because global capitalism functions through global capital internationally, and as we see, they are very organized through these expositions and conferences and everything. So it's not just that they control in a way or pressure the states to create legal frames for their mobility and investments, but they are very, very, very well organized internationally, and even more if we are in Europe and in European Union, they benefit of a lot of initiatives at the level of the EU, like the most novel capital market union, which was created to avoid situations that generated the former financial crisis. Nevertheless, is an initiative which creates more problems. So for the coalition as we are, I guess it would be crucial to think about more international actions, not only supporting each other, but also looking for sites and opportunities to act, and also to connect to other movements. Housing movements will not make the revolution in themselves, but they can be part of progressive radical changes. And this is what we need, actually, because if capitalism creates a problem, we need an alternative to capitalism. And the housing movement can be part of that, but it's very difficult to actually accomplish this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Enikő. Is there any other speakers, any other questions or reactions to what have been said?
It still was interesting how to organize internationally, like activists against like such a huge international global capitalist structure soaked in local politics and in connect to local private interests. If you have some ideas, that would be wonderful.
Jan.
I have some. No, I'm joking. Yes, I think I'm a bit surprised, because I know all of you, and we have our success stories. We have a great success story heard tonight, in a way. and still we are quite defensive. And I think the question is how we put up this local success to another level, and how we can maybe learn there more. And for example, I think the comrades from Strefi, it's important to have this balance of radical actions and also go the legal ways. And yes, I don't know, I think maybe it's also very late to have a bigger discussion tonight on this. But I think like in the terms of going to also not only the MIPIM campaign that we will present a bit, but also to the housing action days, I think we need another more strategic discussions and yeah, look a bit how we can change narratives and how we can go on and use this potential that we have in the neighborhoods and with people that are not militants like us, but they engage because it's affecting them directly. How we can, I don't know, spread better this thing that in a way we are fighting everywhere the same mechanisms. And I think we will do this very soon. And thank you. Yes, it was super interesting, and maybe we should be more optimistic.
Thank you. We are already doing it. I mean, as a reminder, and we already said it at the beginning, the European Action Coalition started with these common campaigns of different collectives organizing against financialization and the MIPIM. And maybe actually I read it in one paragraph of the new book of Antoine that he was presenting the European Action Coalition and saying that maybe it's one of the few transnational networks organized against financial actors and events like the MIPIM. So yeah, let's say that we are not in the half of the way, but in the beginning. Okay. Is there any other reactions or questions? Maybe it's the moment to speak very briefly and to present what we are going to do this year, because we, as we said, this is just a starting point for our campaign against the MIPIM of this year. So as last year, we will first of all start off addressing letters to our public representatives, the different collectives. I mean, they are going to do it locally. So addressing letters to ask why they are going to participate in the MIPIM, what kind of projects they will present there, and why these kind of projects have not been discussed or democratically decided. In most of the cases, it's the case. So this is one of the actions we'll do. The other one will be decentralized actions during this month, either in front of municipalities or in front of big public investors against whom we are fighting locally. And we are also going to organize a demonstration in Cannes in this period where the MIPIM will take place. So this year it's from the 11th of March to the 15th of March. So we are going to be there, and we will try to do this time maybe to occupy the public space in front of the Palais des Festivals, this very big, well-known building where the MIPIM is taking place. Yes, this is what we can say for the moment, and this is what we can say publicly. Maybe we will do more, for sure we'll do more. So yeah, maybe if anybody else wants to say a last word on what we discussed or anything, you are free to do it, and otherwise we will close this webinar here. And I will, for my part, thank everybody who participated. It was super interesting and super rich. And we will continue doing so, as Jan said, in the next webinars and meetings.
Yeah, and maybe for us in Grenoble, we were in France. We were thinking about it. Maybe it would be nice if there's for example, French investor that invest in project in other country.
Romania?
Yeah, for example, in Romania, as it has been said before. To yeah, and to have the information of who they are and yeah, and what they do, and to have the information, and maybe in our country we could
make some protests.
Yeah, exactly.
We can make some protests in the same time in where there are investment and where there are the I don't know le siège. Well, yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. I mean, in this in our network, we have this opportunity and this space to organize coordinated actions and also to exchange information. We also organizing working groups. So we have an action group where we prepare our campaigns, our actions, the housing action days, the anti-MIPIM campaign. So yeah, we will have the possibility to organize all this there. Okay, so I would like to formally, last time, thank everybody. Especially thank our speakers. It was super nice, super interesting, and to see you, to say to everybody that we will meet soon in our actions and in the streets. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.